Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of Taboo Table Talk. I'm your host, Krish Mohan, and we have a year-end wrap-up episode. That's the thing to do around this time of year. And I figured I would do one, which is good because I think this is some stuff that I should probably also say out loud to remind myself of where I was and how far I've come this year. Just you know, as as much as it is kind of an explanation of what's happening with me, so you guys are aware. It's also a good reminder to myself. And I have notes because I was like, well, I could just kind of go off the top of my head and try to do things in sequential order, but I know I would fuck something up and forget something, so I decided to break it into separate little categories and approach it that way, compartmentalize the information. And obviously, because this is sort of a different type of episode, I there's no background music or any such thing, and I'll do a couple of little announcements up at the top and at the end as well. So the biggest thing to do is if you enjoyed this stuff, if you enjoy any episode of this podcast or any of the videos or podcasts that I put out. Please do share them. That's the biggest thing that you can do to help out independent media in general is to share this out to as many people as you possibly can. Um, if you would like to, you can become a sustaining member, get free tickets to virtual shows, to live shows when I'm in your city. You get all of my stand-up comedy albums, and you get a bunch of other little bonus treats here and there. I don't know if you heard that, but that was my elbow slipping off of my chair. Wonderful. Anyway, I'm fine. I'm being a big baby about it. But so that's something you can do, and you can find all this information on my website, krishmohanhaha.com, KRISHMOHANHAHA.com. And you can check out my tour dates. I've got a couple of tour dates coming up. Actually, I'm going to be on the road with Ron Placone in April. So that's pretty exciting. I'm very much looking forward to that. I am also going to be headlining at the Church of Satire in Hanover, Pennsylvania on January 28th and 29th. So if you're in the Hanover area, if you're in the Lancaster area, if you're in the Harrisburg area, hell, even if you're in the Baltimore area, this would be a show to come out to. Those are all kind of close drivable cities that I would normally perform at, so if you're in those cities, come hang out with us at the Church of Satire. This is going to be a super fun show. Yeah, and I've got a couple virtual shows as well. The next Forkful of Noodles recording is on January 20th. You can grab tickets for that. And the next time I'm going to be doing my stand-up show, Citizen Revolution, is going to be on February 3rd. February 3rd. And those are both Thursdays. They're weekdays. It's 8 p.m. in the evening. So you can grab tickets for those two shows on my website. And I'm also hosting a fundraiser for the Pittsburgh DSA for their Feed the Hood program. It's basically similar to what the Black Panthers did with their free breakfast for kids program. But this is just targeting the entire neighborhood that they are working out of. So that's January 27th. So you can check out all of those dates on my website, krishmohanhaha.com. It's KRISHMOHANHAHA.com, which is pretty cool, very exciting. So go check that out. That's all the announcy stuff that I want to do for now. So let's get into this year end wrap up situation. Important to start at the end of last year, at the end of 2020. What kind of mindset I was in, because that mindset is going to carry over into the beginning of the following year, and that's what you're going to build off of. So I think it's important for me to kind of look at that. At the end of 2020, I was suffering from depression, because I was burnt out. 2020 was, a difficult year for everybody, and we all went through our own personal challenges. I was writing a new, 60 to 90-minute show every week. I did that for about 4 months, got burnt out, had started this new relationship, moved in with that person. Like it was a lot of changes rather quickly. And by the fall, a lot of that stuff had caught up to me. I was just exhausted. I wasn't really having fun with comedy. Um, I enjoyed the virtual shows, but I wasn't having fun with it, if that makes any sense. It really became stressful, and there was no one really putting that stress on me other than myself. So kind of had to rethink. That was, I think, the start of me rethinking my work life balance, which was something that I always wanted to achieve, but was very, very difficult to achieve as a touring comic. And I'm still somewhat a touring comic, but the state of the world has made that a little bit more of a difficult title to maintain. But that was also part of the depression. The fall was always a big time for me to be on the road and tour, and that's what I was used to. And this was the first time that I was standing still in over a decade, and that was kind of getting to me. I was still dealing with a lot of PTSD from the divorce, being in an abusive relationship for a very long time, an emotionally abusive relationship for a very long time. So there was, mental health issues that I was dealing with that, the trauma of that, and kind of trying to figure out what do I do to cope with this thing and not really finding any answers. So I was pretty depressed at the end of 2020, and I wanted to make changes, because one of the things that I have learned over the course of many years is that your physical health and mental health are pretty related. So when you are when you do things to take care of your physical health, it does end up improving your mental health as well. And when you improve your mental health, you're able to push a little bit further in terms of taking care of your physical health and things of that sort. So that was some of the changes I wanted to make at the end of 2020, is improve my physical and mental health. I wanted to get some financial stability, and really focus on finding a good work life balance. That was something that I really wanted to do, and went into 2021 with that attitude. I want to have a better work life balance, and I tried many different things throughout the year, and I'll kind of go through a lot of those. Financial stability. At that time, I was still taking care of this 80-year-old woman who had dementia, and as great as it was, it was not a lot of money. It was not a point of financial stability. Really, what was helping me hold my financial stability in place was the fact that my bills were extremely low. I wasn't driving as much, so I wasn't putting that much money in gas. Stuff like that was helping, but this the part-time job that I had was very much a temporary solution, and I needed to find something that was going to be more of a permanent solution, and find it quick. So finding a job that I was going to be able to do, that I wouldn't hate, but that would also allow me to do comedy and content creation and stuff like that was very important to me. And so around December is really when I started looking for some kind of part-time employment. And again, it has been quite some time since I had a day job of sorts with comedy, and that was again, it felt like a step back. needing this job felt like a step back. So that also contributed to my depression. But really, if I could find something that would keep me financially stable, then I could, use that financial stability to and build off of it. Right. That's really all I think everybody is trying to do with financial stability. uh so those were the kind of the goals and mindsets that I was entering 2021 into. And I was pretty jet set on keeping a lot of these promises to myself, because I didn't want to get caught up in the same trappings that I was getting caught up with in, for the past decade of my life. Um, so the year started with some trouble, with some professional trouble. So that's kind of what I'll talk about here. Is we'll start with the professional trouble and move from there. Within the first couple weeks, I got 2 strikes on my YouTube channel, something I've never had happen before. And a lot of that was related to the January 6th, insurrection thing that happened there. And um, I know some people are gonna have an issue with me calling it an insurrection. I just don't know what else to fucking call it. That's just a recognizable title, so people know what I'm referring to. So before everybody freaks out that I said there's your reason for why I called it what I called it. But I got 2 strikes within 10 days. Within a few weeks into the new year. And I'm donating blood. When I find this out, it's 11 o'clock in the morning. I haven't really had a lot to eat. I'm drinking a lot of water, and I find out that there's a strike on my channel. And it's over me reading a Time magazine article, and the Time magazine article basically points out that a high ranking advisor in the AFL-CIO essentially ran their own Cambridge Analytica campaign to ensure that Joe Biden would get elected. Same thing that the Mercers did with Cambridge Analytica, which was this British company that would manipulate elections for certain candidates if you paid them enough money, and Facebook allowed them to do that. There was a whistleblower that revealed all this information. Basically doing that for Joe Biden. And if we're going to stay consistent, then people on the left should be very, very upset that that's what happened with the election. And by reading the article and reading large portions of the article that Time magazine has written, my channel got a strike because, according to YouTube, I was being nefarious about the election. I was like, I'm literally reading and breaking down an article. The Time magazine article still remains to be up. I've had many arguments with a lot of people, but a lot of people are because it's the Democratic Party and it's about a fraction of a percent better than the Trump administration, or it seemed like it was going to be a fraction of the, and American voters are so abused that even something like that is going to be like, oh my God, it's such a respite from what we had, all that nonsense. I had a lot of people kind of argue with me about that, and it was obnoxious and difficult because usually whenever liberals because I mean I don't really hold back in these sort of online debates, which is why I've pulled back from a lot of these online debates. Is I'm not going to be mean, but I am going to state facts. And for them to say, well, it was okay because we needed to elect Joe Biden, when if Trump did it, it's evil, nefarious, and corruption was invented by well, that's a double standard. And by pointing out the double standard, a lot of people got upset. But, that's so it goes when your belief systems are challenged and then proven wrong. Or you see a side of yourself, you're willing to justify corruption because the ends justify the means kind of thing. Well, it still means that you're justifying corruption. And if we want a better system, if we want to get out of, the state of the world that we're in, well, we're going to have to call out our favorite candidates when they prove that they're corrupt, or that the system that you've been told to believe in because it was all about justice and blah blah, it turns out to be just as corrupt as the people they're calling out. So that was kind of frustrating. And then those same people were like, well, you deserve the strike because you shouldn't have said those things. You shouldn't have pointed those things out. I had a lot of Democrats come out in 2020 and throughout 2021, um that were basically like, hey, I know Joe Biden's not perfect, but like, can you just ignore all of the terrible things about him and realize that as a human being, he is a different human being than Trump? And it's like, yes, their gene codes are quite different, but they're virtually the exact same personality. Again, because it wasn't Orange Man bad, it was justified. It was very frustrating to deal with that. And then a couple days later, about 10 days later, I got a second strike on my YouTube channel. Um and that was because I basically used like facts and data to show that America is not an actual democracy. We're a corporate oligarchy, because our elections are controlled, so we can't actually be a democracy. Da 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 da. And I titled the video pretty strongly, and that video was released months. I mean, I think it was like August of 2020 or something like that I put out that video. I can't remember the exact date, but like it was months before the strike even happened. And basically now, that was 2 weeks I couldn't stream. It was 2 weeks I couldn't upload videos. And it's not like when they give you a strike, they're like, hey, you have 24 hours before the strike takes effect. It's just, we gave you a strike, boom, you're done for 2 weeks. You can't make any announcements, because there are certain people that only followed me on YouTube, that only followed me on one platform. And when that platform takes you out, you do lose a certain portion of your audience because you can't communicate with that audience, that, you have a strike against your channel. So that's how the year started. But after a little while, I fell into a pretty good rhythm. I was still, and I didn't notice it when this was happening, but I still was doing a little too much. I was doing about 3 live streams a week. I was doing about 2 podcasts a week and a monthly show. And that's a lot of content. And even then I was just like, this is fine, this is okay, it keeps my mind occupied, yada yada yada. And that continued throughout the summer. And I got a job at as a security guard. And so I had to like wrap things up with the 80-year-old woman that I was taking care of, start this new job, adjust to this new job, and then I got a different opportunity, to work on a project that I very much care about and with people that I very much care about. And I took on that opportunity. It was work from home. It allowed me to create more content more regularly. So I shifted, when I was doing my live streams, but the frequency was still the same, and that lasted about a few months. And throughout this time, I the relationship had ended, and like my life was kind of changing around a little bit more. I was taking care of my physical health a lot more. I was focusing on my mental health. And I kind of decided that it was time to spend a little bit of time with myself, try to like just get myself out of this really terrible headspace that I was in. And part of that was doing the work that I was doing, and part of that was trying to find a reasonable schedule to work within. And I thought that I had that until about August, and I started hitting this burnout point where I felt like I was just saying stuff to say stuff. And I needed to take a little bit of a break, and I thought it was going to be a 1 month break turned into a 3 month break. Um, part of that had to do with some personal strife that I went through at that time. I was moving. I was in a pretty terrible um, living situation, and I just, I was surrounded by people, by very, very negative and toxic people that I didn't particularly think I should continue being around, and I had to get out of that situation, and a lot of that stuff was happening. That also contributed to the extension of the burnout. But once that was all kind of taken care of, I started getting really itchy to create content, but I had to think about why I got burnt out. What was the reason, and what do I need to do now to move forward so that I'm not getting burnt out every year, and I can't take 3 months off every year from creating content because I'm just continuing to do the same things over and over again. So I had to really think. I was putting out 7 to 14 videos a week to keep up with everybody in the YouTube world, right? To keep up on the topics that are important, to keep up with the developing stories, with the topics that I care about, with stuff like that. Uh, and and for the most part, I still had a part-time job. I had a job as a security guard. I have this new project I'm working on, and you know, it was still a lot. I was still doing a lot. And in some cases, I would even say right now I'm probably still kind of doing a lot. I don't know if that's particularly true or not, uh, but I've definitely felt that way, more than a few times, over the last, even over the last, like, month or 2. Um, but that's the goal. The goal is to have a reasonable weekly and daily schedule, reasonable weekly and daily goals. So the idea right now, after I kinda thought about all this stuff, is, well, I think I should focus more on quality rather than quantity, because I was focusing more on the quantity of what I was putting out and not the quality of it towards the end. So I want to produce at least one quality piece of comedy or content per week, but I'm going to take my time with it now. That was something that I really thought um not, I don't know if missing is the right word, but it was something that I had to put some thought into. Is, if I'm going to put this stuff out there, I got to take my time with it. Um and a lot of that comes from a shift in my own personal perspective of things. And I'll get into um, the details of that shift in, because this was kind of a big breakthrough moment that led to, like, a lot of other changes that I'm started to make, and am actively making in my life now. And that takes us to the next portion of the big thing that happened this year, was mental health. I had to really, really focus on improving my mental health. Being in an abusive relationship for 5 years, it has a pretty major impact on your life, especially when you kind of realize uh, how deep and how long that emotional abuse had really taken place. And the difficult thing with trauma, any kind of trauma, CPTSD, PTSD, what have you, physical, emotional, uh, that sort of stuff, is there's no pills for this, guys. So if you know someone that's suffering from trauma, be kind to them, be understanding that they might not be operating at 100% all the time. They're, the anxiety and the depression can very much be physically exhausting. Um, so mental health was something big. One of the big things that I learned this year, and actively had to do and was doing throughout the year, thanks to therapy, is reframing my thoughts, right? Because one of the things that I came to the conclusion of with this personal perspective shift, is I spent about a decade doing one thing that I loved, and I basically didn't focus on a lot of the other things that I loved, right? Like I think I could have been a lot closer to people that I'm very close to now, over the like that exponentially we've gotten closer. So I want to maintain those relationships. I'm currently in a stable environment. I would like to stay in this stable environment for a while, because since I would say since 2017, I've moved almost every single year to a different place, and I would like a little bit of consistency in that. So that was something that I had to like really think about this past year, and realize that, yeah, I think that's what I want. This 40 some odd weeks of touring thing isn't particularly going to work out for me anymore, because that's what I did for a decade, and that's all I did for a decade, and I gave up all of these other things. So now I want to you know dedicate some time to the other things that I really love: listening to music, being around friends and loved ones, getting to know them, getting closer with them, dating and finding a good partner to be with, and so on and so forth. Collecting comic books, reading, getting in touch with video games again, like having going to the gym. Like next year I want to take martial arts classes, so that I know how to have some to build some confidence. I know how to defend myself a little bit better, like stuff like that. That's really important, and I always enjoyed martial arts stuff. But I wanted to kind of focus on that stuff, but I always felt guilty. I always felt guilty giving into that, right? Oh, it's not focusing because of that hustle culture mentality that I lived in for a decade. For a decade, I lived in that hustle culture. I listened to those comics that were like, if you're not up on a stage every single night of the week, then you're not a real comic, then you're not a real this. And I listened to that, and I believed that, and I wanted to prove that I was one of these road dogs, and for a while it was fun, and now I want to do other stuff that's also fun. I'm not quitting comedy. I'm just reducing the amount of time that I'm going to focus on it. Because your whole life shouldn't be about the work that you do, right? Um, the new job that I got, I started on Bobby's death anniversary, which if you guys watch my streams, or have kind of paid attention to some of the stuff that I've talked about, Bobby was my best friend, who a little over a decade ago committed suicide. So I was one of the few people that found him, one of the first people that found him, and kind of had to break the news to all my friends. And so that was it was a big moment in my life. And to start this job on that day, that day one being that it was his death anniversary. I'm not a guy that's big on signs, but I don't know, it felt right. I don't have like an answer or an explanation. It's just like it felt right. That's really all I have to say about it. But the thing this job offered me is some form of financial stability. And once that stability became more stable, or just more of a part of my life, I was able to, start working through some debt, start being able to afford certain things I've never been able to afford before. And again, I would feel this level of guilt that partly again came from living in poverty for so long, and saying like, oh, if you can afford this stuff, then that old conservative mentality of like, oh, they can afford the good peanut butter, they might not be doing so bad after. And it's just like poor people aren't allowed to enjoy good, nutritious, delicious things, or just fun recreational things. They're not allowed to be able to partake in that. And that level of guilt is stuck in my head. I think it's stuck in a lot of people's head, right? um But because of this financial stability, it created a different motivation for me to create content. That makes any sense. This was sort of the big shift in my personal perspective. For 10 years, I did comedy as my full-time job, and that meant that comedy was the way that I was going to pay my bills and survive. And that's what I was doing. I was surviving. A lot of months I was surviving. I was getting by every month, and the end of the month would roll around, the bills are paid, gas in my tank, food in my shelves, not a lot of money in my bank account. And then the grind would start over, and and then we would it was this constant thing of like, oh, I have money and I just have enough money to pay all the things that and then it's okay. I'm back to, you know what I mean? And then if it was like an emergency would pop up, so this fear of survival was my motivation. I had to keep going on the road. The jokes had to be good. I have to put pressure on every single word that I say in the order I say it. Everything has to be poetry. Everything has to have a point. It all has to be, and I think it limited me in a certain degree creatively. But now, because I started getting some financial stability, I don't have that survival fear anymore, which just leads me to believe, like, how many fucking people could use that? I think everybody should feel like they shouldn't be afraid to survive, right? Like the fear of survival, this scarcity mentality that we've been living in should just not exist in this society. It really doesn't need to. We have enough food, we have enough housing, we have enough resources that really matter uh, to make sure everybody's taken care of in this country, in this world, even. So the big thing for me was now I'm creating stuff because it's what I want to do. And I'm creating stuff because I'm excited about creating this stuff. I am motivated that way. I'm motivated because talking about this stuff and sharing these stories with you guys, I'm hoping helps people, gets things off of my chest, right? Um and I like talking about this stuff. I'm a very open person, and I think it gives you guys a little bit of an idea of where I'm coming from and my perspectives and my viewpoints. Gives you a little bit of understanding of, hey, Krish hasn't put something up, and oh, that's right, because like you guys get a little view into what's going on in my world. And I think I like being open like this because I'm hoping that it does help. Now, the problem ended up becoming that there was a conflict in my head, and this conflict is still there because fear was such a great motivation. My brain, even though there was this shift of perspective in a whole new direction, it was still reaching back to fear. So now the fear became, oh, you're starting to create content again, you're starting to like get back up on stage and work on stand up again, but what if you're not funny anymore because you're not motivated by fear, and that fear motivation made you hungry to push yourself in this particular way, and then that made you write better jokes. What if you can't do that anymore? Right? Fear of failure, the loss of confidence. But this is a manufactured fear because and it goes back to something that I constantly challenge myself on, which is the tortured artist theory, is that art can only be good if it's created by someone that has been tortured or has gone through a personal strife or is going, or the only way you can create good genius art is if you're constantly in a state of torment or what have you, right? It's why artists that are like, hey, I'm really funny when I do drugs, so I'm gonna do drugs all the time so I can be the funniest person alive. Like when they connect the drug use to their talent rather than the talent is intrinsically there, I think the drugs just maybe helped you access that a little bit easier without any sort of the external factors in play, which is a very fucking academic way of saying you get out of your own fucking way, and the drugs kind of helped. The addiction becomes the problem, and that's why, to me, addiction is a mental health problem. But that's neither here or there. That's a whole different thing. So, what now? This is something my therapist asks me all the time. You figured out that there's this manufactured fear of failure. You're losing confidence in yourself. It's making it difficult for you to create the content that you want to create. It's making it difficult for you to do the things that make you happy. It's funneling itself back into that guilt thought. So now the recreational stuff that you have been enjoying and finding happiness and joy in, uh, and all that reframing work, it seems to be looping back into the guilt. That's not good. This seems like you're taking a step back, but you've recognized that there's this problem. So what do we do? And the solution to that was taking my time to build these new foundations for self-confidence, right? So that means let's slow down the writing process. Let's say I get to the end of this week and I haven't created something new. That's okay. Ideally, I want to create a new piece every single week. That's okay. There's other stuff that I'm also doing outside of that to create content as well, like the road reflection, like the short road reflections videos. These podcasts go up. Maybe creating a piece of content for the internet is not what I needed to do that week because I'm stuck, or because I don't. I've hit a little bit of writer's block. I don't know where to take a story. I don't know where to take a piece. So I have a couple of different things that I wanted to do. I've started to get back into drawing a little bit more. I've started to get back into, self-reflective journaling a little bit more. Although I need to be a little bit better about that. Kicking into holiday mode was not helpful for that either. But that was something that I wanted to do, right? I work on my physical health. When the weather is nice, I could go for a nice long walk. I can go to the gym. I exercise at home. I can hang out with my cat a little bit more if I'm stuck. And doing these things and being patient with myself and saying, yes, this is the ideal goal. But if I don't get to that goal, that's okay. We'll keep working at it because the goal is to create good quality work, good quality content that you're excited about, rather than feeling like, well, I have to get something out. So I'll put this mediocre piece of whatever out because it's fucking Thursday or Friday and I need to have something up on YouTube so that the algorithm, that's all not the way that I want to operate any of this. Not the way that I want to operate my life. Thinking about statistics and all that stuff all the time. And part of that is difficult because it's like my YouTube channel is so fucking censored anyway. So the other thing that I kind of really learned through that is these thoughts of fear and low self-confidence and low self-worth are super deeply rooted in my head. And so I constantly need to keep reminding myself and reworking some of these pathways. So like if I do feel stuck, if I'm nervous about working on a piece, I mean, there's a piece that I'm working on now. Here, this the big exclusive, or whatever. I want to release some short stories. I want to write some short stories, and then the other thing that I want to do is I want to write some reviews and really put some production behind that video piece. But I also want to take some time in writing these short stories based on like my touring experiences, my life experiences, and things of that sort. And it's something I haven't really done before. I haven't really written short stories based on biographical experiences before. That's just not something that I've ever done. So that's something new. I'm very nervous about doing that. I'm very nervous about trying that. Keeping the same knowledge that if it fails, that's okay. You gave it a shot. If it doesn't feel like you, if it feels very alien and what have you, or it's just not something that I'm good at, then okay, we gave it a shot. Let's focus our energy on a different mode of creative outlet. But it's so hard, right? So what I need to do is sit down, buckle down, clear my head, and just write. and just get whatever I have in my head about this thing out, but really take my time with this. And what that does is it again kind of reinforces that. So it's like, hey, it's okay. You're trying something new. Fucking just do it. If people don't like it, they don't like it. It's not the end of the world. You're still you're still good at a lot of these other things that you're doing. So reminding myself about this growth is key, and it's pushed me to our third major topic, which is stand up. It's pushed me to kind of rethink the way that I've approached stand up for as long as I have. The last, I would say, since about 2015, I've been writing with a thesis in mind. That's kind of how I've written a lot of these shows. Um, how not to fit in approaching happiness. I wrote jokes that had some kind of a theme connecting them, but it wasn't a continuous show. There were very clear start to finish of bits. They didn't kind of weave into the other one. So I started writing in that way. And I think Empathy on Sale kind of does that, where it kind of bleeds each bit, each part kind of bleeds into the other. Politely Angry was similar to that. And I tried to do that with Citizen Revolution, but it just felt static. That's what it became. So now what I want to do is I want to keep the jokes that I have in Citizen Revolution. And I'm going to probably perform Citizen Revolution with certain jokes um in mind, uh and do them at the fringe festivals. But for other stand-up shows, and I think I'm going to do it for the virtual show as well, is kind of rebuild this show when in a different context. And I'm also thinking about possibly not doing that. I don't know. I have ideas. I want to do Citizen Revolution as a show, as a holistic show. I still want to do that, but I think I'm gonna try to repurpose some of these bits as individual jokes. So instead of a joke about why I don't believe in electoral politics being framed into the thesis of what is our role as citizens and why we need to work from the ground up and change our mindset about what a revolution actually is. That's kind of the thesis of the show. It's a little wordy, but that's kind of the direction that I want the show to go. Is really focus on how we have come together to take care of ourselves when the government fails us, and what we need to do now is shift our focus into community development rather than electoral development. That might be a better way of saying it, but take some of those jokes, and instead of making it fit into that thesis, write the joke on an individual perspective by itself, kind of like how I did in 2015 and through 2017. Um, and now I'm kind of freed up to take the jokes in any direction that I want them to, so I can have a little bit more fun with them. I'm not locked in. I think because I was like, oh, this is your niche, and this is how you're going to develop an audience and succeed and do this and do that and all the all that kind of statistical rigmarole, because I was in the survival mindset. Now that I'm not, I'm kind of taking those walls down and saying, hey, I've written like this for quite some time. I still like it. I still can do it. But I think now I can kind of have a little bit of separation. I can expand some of my subject choices. So when I go to open mics, or when I get booked on shows, or if I want to try to do something for sustaining members on a monthly basis, which I will get to later, I can have a wide variety of subjects that I'm going to talk about, and kind of present it in a way that, like, these are new bits. This is coming from a new uh perspective. But I've also felt pretty pigeonholed, because and a lot of this has to do with the fact that I pigeonholed myself to talk about politics and ideas and philosophy on stage. And like I said, that restriction was self-imposed, and I don't want to put that restriction on myself anymore. because it's no longer, that's not how I'm going to push myself creatively. I need to take those walls down. And because I have this new mindset, I can start rethinking some stuff. So right now there's about 3 open mics that I feel comfortable going to in the city of Pittsburgh. There's venues that I feel okay with going to and stuff like that. But one of the things I've been thinking about is, okay, I want to do stand-up stuff, right? I want to do virtual, I want to continue doing these virtual shows. So I'm going to continue doing the virtual Forkful recordings, but I think every month or something for my sustaining members, I might do kind of like new material night, of like, hey, this is some stuff I've been working on. Or like, let's take this joke that I have about electoral politics, and let's just talk about that and see what I can do with it and play around with the ideas and chit chat and have fun and kind of take it as like a loose stand-up show, and invite some friends to try out new material as well. And that'll kind of be another incentive thing for sustaining members. Record it, put it up on Rockfin or Odyssey as pay content, or unlisted videos that I release on through the sustaining members email and stuff like that. That's what I think I would like to do. And really, that got me thinking about, like, well, how do I want to handle touring in 2022? If I want to start talking more about personal stuff, road stories, along with the political stuff that I really give a shit about, but I don't have to be pigeonholed to just talking about the political stuff, right? So right now, touring in 2022, I have some dates with Ron Placone in April. I'm gonna have some dates with Lee Camp, and a really good friend of mine, Zach Funk, and I have been talking about doing some dates as well. I probably have 2 or 3 fringe festivals I'd like to apply to and see if I can get in. But the reframing here is that I'm probably only going to do 1 or 2 shows over a course of the weekend or something, because what I want to do is go do a show and then enjoy the city that I'm in. I haven't really been able to do that because a lot of what I had to do during touring was make sure that I was able to get people to shows. So it's promotion, press, getting to like, there's so much driving that I would have to do because I'm going from one city to the next city to the next city. Because if I'm not performing, I'm not hustling, I'm not making money, the survival mindset. Da, 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 da. So now that I'm not in that survival mindset, I would like to take some time on these tours to like enjoy the fucking city that I'm going to, see some things, right? Like, not touristy shit, but like, let's see some of the cool stuff. Is there a dive bar that you guys particularly like? Is there a weird fucking museum uh that I would particularly like? So, is there a cool bookstore, comic book shop, what have you? I want to be able to experience these things now. And now that I have this different frame of mind, thanks to a lot of very dramatic shifts in my life in the last year, I would like to take that and move forward. And then I have 2 more points that I want to talk about that were kind of like these big impacting things. One, I think a lot of you guys know this. Citizens One, the bank, illegally repossessed my car. Whether they admit to it or not, I've been on the phone with 3 different representatives from the office of the chairman. 2 of them were incredibly rude to me. One of them straight up ignored my calls, but they all 3 of them landed in the same spot. We didn't do anything wrong, and you fucked up. That's the way they've been handling it. That's the way they've been going about it. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to escalate the case because right now I'm financially trapped with this bank who illegally repossessed my car. So now there's a repo on my credit history, which means that if I try to refinance this loan, I can't, because refinancing a repossessed loan is really, really difficult. And the bank that would end up taking on that loan would take on some more risks and yada, yada, yada. This, that, and the third. And I went through and I've been fighting them since the end of June. And now I'm gonna have to escalate the case in 2022, which really sucks that is going to be a portion of my energy. But they can't really fucking get away with the shit that they did, and I'm not the only one that they've done this to. Um, So that's been a major point of stress. The last phone call I had, the guy was basically like, "Well, it wasn't really explained properly," and I was like, "Okay, again, why am I being punished for somebody not being able to explain very convoluted rules?" And that was like the thing that we kept going around. We kept landing on, you guys have convoluted rules. You use circular language. You use vague phrasing, and you deviate the conversation, right? So like one of the things I kept saying was like, I can't afford the dollar amount because I've lost most of my income due to COVID. That was something that I kept saying. That's why I was like, I can give you this much. That's not the full amount because I can't afford the full dollar amount. And they kept saying, well, you can make multiple payments. And I was like, that's fine. I still can't afford the full dollar amount. And we kept going over that. And he was like, well, they can't really say that you can't not make payments because that would mean that your car gets repossessed. So, they were basically saying make multiple payments. And I was like, yeah. And I countered that by saying I can't afford the dollar amount. Like I kept saying that. And he was like, yeah, yeah, I know. But, so it just, they're spinning their wheels. And even in their defense, when they land on the fact that the rules are convoluted, vague language was used and circular language was used to ensure that I didn't get the information that I needed, but they still got my money. And then regardless of me paying into this bill and us being in a fucking global pandemic, I would still get fucked out of my car. So that was a big thing that really affected a lot of my mental health, and I had to kind of assess like, well, how do I deal with this kind of stress without it permanently shutting me down? Because that was kind of one of the things that was happening. It's like every single time that this happened, that's it. I was done for the day. And I kind of would vent about it. I would kind of vent about it, and then I'm kind of done for the day. I just don't have any mental energy to put into anything. So I kind of had to really figure out, well, how do I conserve some of this mental energy so that I can put it into? How do I compartmentalize this information? That was kind of a tough challenge. I still don't have it nailed down. The last call I had was maybe a week or two ago now, and it was like I said, what they concluded on was basically, hey, it's still your fault for not understanding our nebulous, vague, roundabout way of saying that you're fucked. And no, we don't have any plans to deal with this because we don't have to have any plans for dealing with this. I could have been like, how much money did you get from the bailout? But that's not going to solve any problems. And I think they would have just ignored my requests and calls and fucking all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't willing to go down that route. The other thing was losing a good friend of mine this year. Uh, we lost a really good friend. He was my best friend's husband, and he passed away in September, and that's been really difficult. Um, Taking care of my best friend was priority one, and that's kind of what our friend circle focused on, was making sure she was going to be okay and her kid was going to be okay, because losing someone is hard. I think a lot of people have lost people over the last 2 years. Dealing with grief is difficult. And we have a society that operates on a system that pretends emotions aren't real. So it doesn't have to accommodate for emotional stress and emotional trauma. And we're trying to change that. So again, and that was also part of the burnout this past year, is heavy personal strife. Amidst that, I'm also dealing with getting out of really toxic relationships and removing toxic people from my life. Death in so there was a lot of stress, especially towards the end of the year. There was a lot of stress, but it's been a super fucking long year, man. And I think it's been a super long year for everybody. So in 2020, 2020 in 2022, it's a new year going forward. I do want to focus on continuing to improve my mental and physical health because um I have seen a lot of improvement in myself. More self-confidence, shifting my writing, the reminders, um those are important, you know, reframing things very important. Uh Pushing myself a little creatively, trying stuff that in 2019 I would have been like, nah, it's too silly for me to do on stage. Well, fuck it, who cares? Now we'll try it and see what happens. Uh Pushing myself creatively in stand up, in podcasting, in writing, in just the different types of content I want to create. So I want to do that. I want to be more myself. Um Politically, personally, whatever. I self-censor in certain situations. And in certain situations it's like, okay, I putting myself in this environment situation not best for everything. Let's hold it back. Yeah, I understand that. I'm not saying this is people tend to, like, when you kind of make these statements, people just think that they're like absolutes, and they're not absolutes. This is stuff that I'm trying to work on and be better at. But I do want to be a little bit more myself. There's a lot of people that have had a problem with, oh, you're too nerdy, or you're too leftist, or you're too socialist, or you have a hard stance on this. And it's like, yeah, sometimes you got to take a hard stance on stuff. And that's okay, as long as you get to be respectful of the other person that you're debating or talking to or what have you. But being more myself, and I kind of say this for, you know, most everybody, is you should be yourself. Goofy, nerdy, whatever the fuck, right? Like, if you're super into sports, that's okay. If you meet somebody that isn't, that's okay. You don't have to talk about, you know what I mean? Like, it's just this shit's not that hard. But being more myself is something. I'm going into a tangent on that one, but that's partly because people have told me, like, who I am fundamentally is upsetting to them. And it's like, okay, I guess we can't hang out. I don't know what you want me to say for the, you know what I mean? And it's just like that. I'm not willing to, and this is, I guess, being more myself is more of a note for relationships, romantic or otherwise, is if somebody is not okay with an aspect of who I am, then that person is not someone that deserves me as a person. And that's a self-confidence growth thing. I want to read more books and comic books. I've gotten back into that, and I really miss it. And I need to have a little bit more discipline about that. And I think a lot of that discipline is going to come from some of the stuff that I'm doing. Is like, I'm changing some physical stuff about myself. But I'm also like go working out a lot more, and I'm taking my physical health and my diet. No, I'm not going on like a starvation diet or anything, but just like trying to eat a little bit better, cook a little bit more, put some more vegetables and good proteins and fats and stuff into my diet, rather than just constantly jamming junk down my throat, or eating too much. That's the other thing that I have a hard time with, is sometimes yeah, boy just eats a little too much. But if and I'm also going to take martial arts classes, as I mentioned. I found one. It's this old form of martial arts that I used to do when I was a teenager, and then it was like I had to come in on Saturdays. And once I had to start coming in on Saturdays, I was like, this is ridiculous. Spider-Man is on right now, and I'm missing it. So I didn't stick with it, but now I want to, because I feel like there's a lot more value in it for me, both physically and mentally. And one of the things is confidence and focus, and a routine. I don't need a 100% routine, but I need some kind of a routine, so I have points of stability throughout my week to help me keep that focus and build that confidence. And part of that is being disciplined about reading, and I think if I have a little bit more focus, and if I have a little bit more of these things that I would like to do and put my energy and attention into, I'll be less bored about things. One of the things I really don't like is, ugh, there's nothing to do. Like, I don't want to have that thought. There's something to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be work, but like, I can draw, take notes, do some journaling, watch a show that I like, something. And the last thing I want to do is leave the house a little bit up more often, whether it's writing at a coffee shop, reading at a coffee shop, or taking a sketchbook out there, or whatever it is, something, but not being stuck in the house all the time. I think when we pandemic, this is be me being as reasonable as I can be, leaving the house within reason in the time of a pandemic, obviously. But encouraging myself to go to more open mics, um, giving myself the permission to say, I'm going to enjoy my Friday night by going out to dinner with somebody, or like meeting up with some friends and playing some spooky board games or D&D, or having a night hanging out and playing video games with a housemate, or going to a movie, or dancing, whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? Just going out, experiencing life and doing things you enjoy, or even just going out by myself to do things that I enjoy, but just leaving the house and being a little bit more social, and again, kind of building the confidence up a little bit more. That's my goal for 2022 anyway. Kind of the goal for 2022 really ends up becoming to strike that balance of work and relationships and friendship and personal time, alone time and all that, and kind of having a balance between all of them, uh and maintaining that balance, right? Like, that's a big thing for me, is, and it's hard to do at times, because life is going to throw you curveballs, but that's the goal. And if you can keep that in mind, then even if you fall back off track, you can figure out a way to navigate back onto the path that you are on. That's the hope. But that's the recap. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this wasn't too boring for you guys. I hope me talking about this stuff. Oh yeah, I guess the other thing too that I have to kind of deal with now is migraines, but that might be more weather related than stress or mental health related. But that is something that I'm gonna have to deal with. I've gotten magnesium. I have medication. I have cannabis to help keep the pain at bay, keep the symptoms low, keep me from not being able to do stuff at a minimum. But it's something that I'm gonna have to cope with, and be forgiving of when it happens. Uh, but yeah, that's the whole recap, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, like, share, subscribe. Make sure you're following me. These interview podcasts come out every single Thursday, so keep an eye out for that. We do have some pretty cool interviews lined up for 2022. I'm very excited to kick off the next year. And yeah, if you want to support my work financially, you can become a sustaining member. Very cool things are coming up with that. I'm working on kind of updating all those things, all the sustaining membership stuff and the website stuff. You can check out my albums on my site. You can check out when I'm doing virtual shows, when I'm doing live performances, when I'm going to be on tour. All of that is available on my website at krishmohanhaha.com, KRISHMOHANHAHA.com. Hey, listen, I know a lot of you guys are on holiday mode, but if you're in the Harrisburg area, if you're in the Baltimore area, the Lancaster area, fuck, even the Philly area, if you're out there, come to Hanover, PA, January 28th and 29th. And come see me at the Church of Satire. Really cool DIY venue. Fucking great intimate space. Really, really love that room, and I'm very excited to get out there and do the damn thing. I'm looking forward to live performances next year, but till then, and again, all the ticket information is on my website, krishmohanhaha.com, KRISHMOHANHAHA.com. You guys are lovely. Thank you guys for supporting my show, my work, my the thing that's kept me going for a long time. Thank you guys for supporting the transitions, the journey, the difficult stuff that I've had to endure this year. Thank you guys for being in my corner for that. I really, really appreciate it, and I hope you know that I am, in your corner when you need me to be in your corner. If that makes sense, I think you guys know what I'm saying. I've talked for entirely way too long. So, with all that said, have a wonderful, happy new year. Be safe out there. Be sure to take care of yourself. Be sure to take care of each other. And as always, folks, stay taboo. This is Krish Mohan, and we'll see you in the new year.